Why do male friendships seem more fulfilling and sustainable? I've noticed that most guys know each other from elementary school and remain good friends into adulthood. I recently attended a scholarship reception where my table was all guys, and they connected well, as if they'd known each other for years. As a 19-year-old female, I prefer to spend time with my female friends. However, when I speak to a guy like at the scholarship reception, it feels lighter and easier. Sometimes with a girl, I feel like I have to put on an act. For example, a guy at the table was listing all the kids he had, and one of the other ladies mentioned it was a lot of kids, and it was fine. If that was said to a woman, she might think it's an insult. I have often been envious of male friendships because they don't have to find new friends every school year. Story 1: Mindset. Really, women desire more. Men just want to be enough. Our friendships are enough. They don't need to be anything more. Story 2: the reason is that friendships between women have aspects of romantic relationships. For example, many women are head over heels in friendship with a new girlfriend, but can also fall out of love later. Male friendships usually don't have these relationship aspects and are, thus, more stable. Story 3: I feel like I have to put on an act. This is exactly it. Women are always performing for each other. Guys who respect you don't expect anything from you. Just be yourself and don't make my life harder, and we will be friends. Story 4: when disagreements could lead to violence, you learn to de-escalate, forgive quickly, and have the utmost respect for personal space and boundaries. These things foster long-lasting friendships, but closeness develops much more slowly. Story 5: I once read an article about a woman who started an all-women corporation. She described how catty and spiteful everyone was to each other, and how it escalated to the point that the company imploded 2 years later. It's an interesting read. It definitely shows some elements of how men and women have differing views on friendships and rivalries. Story 6: guys are more casual with friendships. We rarely expect much from each other, making it easy to get together. It's how two guys can meet after years and quickly reconnect. However, this also means most of our friendships are quite shallow because men don't open up. We don't open up to women, and we certainly don't open up to our friends. It's not strictly due to a fear of seeming weak, but because that's what we've been taught. I don't think we often pursue further contact with those people either. A group of guys who have not met each other can connect at a social event, feel like friends, then part ways and never see each other again. As a result, many men nowadays feel very lonely. Story 7: less drama, fewer questions, willing to forgive faster, never talking too much, and usually spending time together revolves around activities rather than just talking. Story 8: I think guys are more relaxed about disagreements or issues than many women are. I've had some major arguments with a couple of my best friends that I've known for 15 to 20 years. We've always worked it out, though. Whereas I see some women who end friendships over the smallest things. My mom is known for it. She was best friends with someone for about 10 years. They went out for drinks, and my mom hit it off with a guy. Important point: she is and was single. Her friend left her to it, which led to my mom getting upset at her for abandoning her. Friendship over. That happened when I was 12. I thought it was silly then, and while I can see why my mom was upset about it now, I don't think it's worth ending such a long friendship. Story 9: I understand where you are coming from, and it's something I noticed growing up, especially in high school. Guys tend to have the same friend group for years, while girls seem to change friends more frequently. I'm not sure if this is good or bad. There are probably many factors that lead to this dynamic which I don't understand enough to explain. But I can share my male perspective through a story. My best friend is someone I met in school when I was 12 years old. We became friends over a video game he had on his pencil case that I also enjoyed. We bonded over that shared connection. Growing up, we always had each other's backs. Even when I knew my friend was wrong, I would support him, then talk to him afterward about why I thought it wasn't the best thing. I think men tend to forgive each other and show loyalty to a degree that isn't always healthy. I remember once we were in a nightclub, probably around 18 or 19 years old. I said something to my friend he didn't like. I kept saying it in a mocking way, even though I could see it was hurting him. He snapped and started punching me in my arms and chest as hard as he could, leaving heavy bruising. After a few punches, I told him to stop and slapped him across the face. We ended up grabbing each other by the shirt and pummeling each other, but not in the face. We weren't trying to seriously hurt each other. It was like we were venting our frustrations. We eventually told each other to leave and stormed off in separate directions. About an hour later, we bumped into each other and awkwardly apologized while embracing. We hugged and said we were sorry and that we loved each other. We were both pretty drunk. After that, we carried on as normal. I don't think we've ever talked about that night since. We just accepted it and moved on. I'm not exaggerating when I say I would die for my friend. If a knife or bullet was heading his way and I could jump in front of it, I would. I'm not joking. I think he might do the same for me, but I'm not 100% sure. Whether he would or not doesn't really matter to me. That said, this same friend lives on the other side of the city and has a family, so we don't talk as much as we used to. Sometimes weeks or even months pass before we hang out or text or call each other. But every time we do, it feels like there's no distance or separation. It's just the same as it's always been. Guys can be emotionally unaware and loyal in certain contexts. I'm not going to lie. I'm getting a little emotional while typing this. I'm going to text my friend. Story 10. Shared adversity. Guys do a lot of dumb things growing up, and we rely on our friends to have our backs through all of it as we have theirs. This more or less hardwires that particular group of guys into our brains as the people we can rely on. Almost nobody who comes into our lives after that will be able to earn the same level of trust, unless we're sent to war or something equally as challenging where we're forced to rely on each other to the same extent. It's probably some kind of ancient tribal survival instinct that's carried over. Story 11. I think our friendships are fundamentally rooted in loyalty and making the best of it when we're together. If we can't meet for weeks, when we do, we're just enjoying ourselves and having fun. There's no pettiness about, why didn't you call me? We're both busy, and things get in the way. What matters is that my friend is there in times of need. If there's an emergency, I know he's got my back. As for the deep talks, they happen. It happens rarely, and we immediately joke about the matter, but it happens. It's just our way of doing it, where we tell each other, that sucks, but you'll be fine. I'm here if you need help. However, inappropriate joke. I really don't know what happens on the female side of things, and whether they have deep, long-lasting friendships or not. I hope they do, but if not, then they should probably look inward. Story 12. Men treat their relationships like footballs, and they last forever. Women treat their relationships like porcelain, and they fall apart. Story 13. They're like any friendships, but ours are mostly built around shared experiences when young, and we maintain them through activities. Those things happen automatically when you're in school, mainly due to shared interests, but not as much when you're older. It takes more effort to build and sustain those friendships by planning activities and creating shared experiences. If you go through hardships together, that strengthens a friendship. That's why war buddies exist. Story 14. I feel like the fact that guys prefer talking about things instead of people has something to do with it. It means no gossip, no potential slander, no judgment, and no need to put on an act to avoid getting judged. There's no need to prove anything. We just want to relax with a beer, crack a few jokes, and talk about stuff. I think there is usually some kind of camaraderie with the guys, and it's nice. Story 15. Being authentically you. Being honest. Spending a lot of time together making memories, laughing, and roasting. Every time we hang out, one of us is crying with laughter. The time spent, I wouldn't trade it for gold because it's irreplaceable. We try to understand perspectives and usually talk about times in history, current events, or interesting discussion topics. We're also competitive, so trash talking has to be top-notch. We don't mean it with bad intentions. We just want to compete against the best versions of ourselves, whether it's basketball, beer pong, playing cards, or sports betting. I think that's the big thing people miss. Story 16. Non-dependency is my take. I don't need to see my friends very often, sometimes for years, and if our friendship is strong enough, it won't matter. We'll pick right back up where we left off when we do see each other again. My wife constantly complains about her old friends and how little they see each other or stay in touch. When your disposition towards your friends is annoyance about how often you see them, it doesn't seem likely to last. Just last week, I was sitting on a bench outside my gym when a guy sat down next to me, and we started chatting. It was my high school best friend whom I hadn't seen in over a decade. We never mentioned the last time or asked where the other had been or when we last talked. We just hung out for about 15 minutes, stood up, hugged, and said, "It was nice to see you again. Let's not wait this long until next time," and walked away. I think I'll call him up when the summer stress starts winding down. Story 17. I do prefer to hang out with the girls. However, when I speak to a guy, it feels a lot lighter and easier. While with a girl sometimes I feel like I have to put on an act. For example, a guy at the table was listing all the kids he had, and one of the other ladies mentioned that it was a lot of kids and it was fine. If that was said to a woman, she might think you're insulting her. You've answered your own question. Story 18. What determined whether friendships survived with girls was whether they made the effort to talk more to each other on the phone, said Robin Dunbar, who led the Oxford study. What held up male friendships was doing stuff together, like going to a football match, going to the pub for a drink, or playing five-a-side. They had to make the effort. It was a very striking sex difference. From a Men's Health article citing women favor dyadic relationships, but men prefer clubs. Cross-cultural evidence from social networking. Story 19. I worked with a guy for 3 years, never even knew his name. Best friend I ever had. We still never talk sometimes. Story 20. We don't stress things that don't matter. Women often demand that their friendships act as pseudo-relationships. They need to know and be part of every little thing, or at least feel considered part of it. Otherwise, they perceive the friendship as lesser. For example, if my male friends don't know my birthday, I don't care because I typically don't celebrate it. It's just another day to me. On the flip side, my female friends may feel like we aren't really friends if they don't know certain details of my life, like my birthday. From my perspective, there's constant information gathering on the female side to prove they care and are friends. In my experience, this is why their friendships crumble easily, and it's often one of the first issues raised when there's a falling out. The notion that women can't survive a girl's trip and always come back as friends holds merit. I've seen many instances where my female friends hang out or go on a trip and one minor incident ends their friendship. I've seen entire friend groups dissolve over petty reasons. On the male side, it takes something significant to end a friendship, like being disrespectful towards a girlfriend or money issues. Men don't need their friendships to be overly involved. We are friends, not family or partners. I know you care, but I don't need you to know everything about me to consider you a friend. We tend to know which friends are there for life and which are just good for an occasional day out or a drink. Story 21. Genuineness, familiarity, and trust. After a certain point, the friendship solidifies, and you'll feel like no matter the distance between you, you can always count on your friend. You don't have to prove yourself to him because that's where familiarity comes in. You know the person, you know his capabilities and his nature, and you accept and cherish it. You compete with him as long as it's healthy, but you never want to put him down. You'll come to a point where his happiness makes you happy. There's complete resonance. You can just unwind and be genuine. He won't try to change you unless you negatively deviate from your usual behavior. That's why I can't comprehend how there's a loneliness epidemic among men. It's very easy to be friends with a guy. You don't have to gift him anything, you don't have to make any extra effort, you don't even have to know his birthday. All you have to do is convince him that you can be relied upon, spend some time every now and then, and listen when he wants to talk, which is extremely easy considering people are just a few texts away. Story 22. Guys, in general, don't have long lists of expectations and requirements that you have to follow to stay in each other's good graces. Men tend to understand real life a lot better than women. That's why there's the stereotype of men not talking for years, but still considering each other best friends. We understand that life happens. A guy friend not checking in on us every 5 minutes isn't a big betrayal like it can be for women. We don't need a lot of things. We can just exist and come together when we have time, giving without expecting anything in return. I've heard and personally experienced women doing things for me or other women, and then holding that favor over their heads as if they sacrificed everything to loan you $10 or help with a task. In short, men tend to be less high maintenance, more independent, and more giving and understanding. Story 23. Men are very direct, which makes things simpler. If I have a problem with someone, I tell them. Women are the opposite. They're indirect and often non-confrontational, which leads to a strange performance women put on for each other. They use sympathy as a mask, and when they have issues with someone, they exclude and slander, pretending to get along. I don't have to pretend with my friends. Story 24. Men don't get offended by every little thing. We don't notice aggressive tone, whatever that is, and it frees us to be emotionally available for one another without feeling like a friend is going to attack, mock, or demean us. This is liberating in every sense of communication. Women, on the other hand, they aren't always loyal. Story 25. I feel like men have more varied hobbies and, therefore, can connect with other men about a variety of things. The women I've grown up with stopped sports or anything interesting in early high school, and now margaritas, Stanley Cups, or a glass of wine is their hobby or personality. So, where is there to connect over something like that? Story 26. I'm the opposite. I'm a married male, 39, with kids and find it harder to be friends with men than women. I don't fall into the stereotypical male category in the most common areas and find it challenging to maintain long-lasting friendships with men. Most friends in my life are unreliable and don't know how to reciprocate a friendship. Story 27. This subreddit is usually filled with people complaining about how lonely they are and how difficult it is to make lasting friendships. I can also guarantee that other women know you like befriending other men, and they don't like you because they know what you're up to. Story 28. This is a generalization for a common situation. I notice many women cut ties with their friends for good once there is a significant conflict. I think it's a combination of refusing to apologize and saying something in the heat of the moment that cannot be unsaid once emotions have cooled down. I observed that men tend to avoid making harsh statements even during conflicts. I also see more acknowledgement of wrongdoing and admission of faults in male friendships. This definitely helps in moving the relationship forward. Just my opinion. Story 29. Male friendships often last a long time because they are typically shallow and based on loyalty, familiarity, and having fun together. They're not deep interpersonal connections. Men usually have one friendship like a deep connection, and it's often their marriage or long-term partner. Men tend to be meaner to each other casually than women. Comments like, "That's a lot of kids," don't hit hard because friends in the group chat might tell him he needs to be more responsible. We brush that off because we're used to it. My wife dislikes being in group chats with my friends because of our way of talking to each other. Story 30. We are genuine with each other. This is the main reason. We understand what the other person says and why, instead of speaking in riddles and trying to interpret them. We don't boast about anything that has caused issues. We will discuss or argue about it, resolving it promptly, and then everything returns to normal. Men don't degrade or compete with friends, with a few exceptions. Men expect less from each other. We don't see ourselves as the central figure in our friendship. We have established rules going back to Adam that we don't even know about. Story 31. Loneliness. Men know very well that if they disappear one day, no one will look back at them or barely notice, so they tend to choose a few really close ones instead of big groups. This also explains why they limit contact with the outside world once they get girlfriends or wives. They're often the ones who will look for their husbands. Story 32. I chalk it up to a handful of things. Guy friendships are a lot more relaxed. No drama, no baggage. We don't bring anything other than ourselves. Literally, I can just sit with a beer with one of my friends and not say a word, and that's considered a good time hanging out. If we want to open up and talk about stuff, we can, and we know that whatever is said is taken to the grave and we've got support. Same if we were out and one of us got into a fight with someone, there's zero hesitation to have each other's back. There might be some reprimanding after the fact, but that's after the fact. Guys are also easier to forgive other guys. The joke about guys in a bar fight is more accurate than you think. The loser buys the beer, you and he are now best friends, Then you joke about it afterwards. Story 33. The Book Mindset. The New Psychology of Success by Carol S. Dweck discusses the typical upbringing differences between genders. In traditional Western society, boys are often encouraged to improve constantly, interacting through pranks and playful insults. This environment helps them become better at handling criticism and growing from it. In contrast, girls are often treated more gently and may not face as many challenges during childhood. My friends in management have mentioned that conducting performance reviews with male employees tends to be easier. This is certainly a generalization, but I believe it relates to one's experiences. Story 34. In my opinion, we're just low maintenance. My friend went to the military about 10 years ago. I haven't seen him in 7, but once a month or so, we chat about whatever, usually sports. We're planning a trip to a college football game where the itinerary is literally to drink, watch football, eat, and repeat for 4 days. This may be a controversial take, but I also think men are better at de-escalating violent or potentially violent conflicts. If two women get mad, they're more likely to call each other names and pull hair than really fight. Men who go beyond yelling will potentially inflict serious harm on another, and most of us don't take that lightly. The women I know have been in more fights than me and most men I know. You have to be respectful in conflict resolution unless you want to get punched in the face or worse. Story 35. Doesn't need constant maintenance. For women, they need to keep checking in over time and validate that they are still friends. If too much time passes, they begin to think the other is mad at them or is a bad friend or doesn't like them anymore, and they will stop being friends. With guys, unless something has happened, we expect the relationship with another guy to be exactly where it was when we last saw each other. Just because I don't hear from a friend for several years doesn't mean we aren't as good friends as we were before. It just means life has happened, and we will pick up where we left off next time we talk or see each other. Story 36. I have a friend I've known since we were 6 years old. Nearly 20 years of friendship. It isn't perfect. There are qualities we dislike about each other, but we have the patience to look past those bad qualities. Sometimes the best of friends are those that are good enough, not the ones who share the most qualities you do. Story 37. Because we're simple and don't require trauma to link us together, we don't need to share that kind of stuff to be friends who share jokes and a good afternoon of cards and barbecue. We prefer not to talk about gossip. We talk about the future most times and what we're planning and doing with our family or hobbies, not the issues of the past. More often than not, when I walk in on a group of ladies talking, it's gossip about other ladies or families or medical issues or something heavy. Every time. Forget that. Story 38. Well, as a man, I'm envious of female friendships. From my perspective as a clueless man, female friendships seem so supportive, deep, and meaningful. I would love to have even 3 male friends I could get that from. I guess each gender wants what the other one has. Ha. Story 39. From a 2021 survey by the Center on American Life, it was found that men are far less likely than women to have received emotional support from a friend. 41% of women report having received emotional support from a friend within the past week, compared to 21% of men. Additionally, women more regularly tell their friends they love them. About 49% of women say they have told a friend they love them within the past week, whereas only 25% of men have done this. There are no generational differences. Younger men are no more likely than older men to have shared their personal feelings with a friend. However, men with female friends are significantly more likely to express their feelings and receive emotional support. 28% of men with female friends report receiving emotional support from a friend within the past week, compared to 16% of men without female friends. Men with female friends are also more likely to have shared personal feelings at a rate of 38% compared to 25%, and to have told a friend they love them at a rate of 35% compared to 15% in the past week. Story 41. Less drama. 2. More straightforwardness when things need to be said, regardless of risking insult, especially to help someone improve or communicate thoughts. We take things less personally. Not everything has a hidden meaning. We generally say what we mean and mean what we say. We are more loyal. We generally live by an unspoken code of honor. We forgive more easily if we hear a genuine apology. Women tend to hold onto things longer. We don't remind each other of past mistakes to manipulate or gain compliance. That's my general observation. Sorry to hear about your situation, but in friendships, men often have it easier. I've heard many stories similar to yours. Story 41. I talk to my best friend maybe once a month or two, besides the occasional text. Most of the time, a phone call is related to something cool or funny that happened, was purchased, or was seen. Story 42. Guys just want to hang out and tell jokes. Maybe our friendships last so long because we don't see each other that much, so we're on a slower time scale. Hardly ever any real talk. Story 43. Male friendships develop naturally with less pressure to seek approval. Wanting to be liked can be a big turnoff because it doesn't feel genuine. Additionally, we have a primal need to know if a friend would support us if something happens, just as we would support them. These friendships tend to be less contentious because we're more likely to address poor behavior directly. I've been fortunate to be part of a large friendship group, bridging two groups, a football group and a school group. Groups of good people tend to identify and exclude troublesome individuals. Story 44. I only have one close male friend, extremely small friend group, but we talk about everything. There's nothing hidden, which makes the friendship easy. Story 45. Boundaries are more clearly defined. We also tend to befriend those with different tastes in women, which will stop a lot of unnecessary issues. Story 46. In my experience, it is a combination of trust, affinity, and shared experience. I don't think it differs much from female best friends. It's circles within circles, no difference. I'm 44 and down to my last circle, laughing out loud. Story 47. A couple of observations. It's not true that there aren't ups and downs in male friendships. We seem to cut our losses quicker without all the drama, resolving differences with less fuss. We tend not to dwell on these ups and downs, meaning you hear a lot less about them. Regarding the scholarship dinner, have you considered that some of them may have already met? Regarding the man with multiple kids, most guys around the table may have thought, though not said out loud, that he sounds like an utter fool. In general terms, we are more comfortable and don't interpret it as a failing if we don't speak or spend time with each other for long periods, even years. Our social circles tend to be smaller, particularly when we're in committed relationships. While we tend to keep things light, meaning we can converse comfortably with other men we don't know well, it's simply not true that we don't have meaningful and emotionally supportive friendships, albeit within a tighter-knit group, perhaps with one or two other people. I do not speak for all of humanity. Other opinions are available. Story 48. I'm just going to throw this example out there. My best friend's girlfriend, let's call her J for ease, isn't getting along with her best friend anymore, whom we'll call B. B got a boyfriend last year and has been spending all her time with him. J doesn't get to spend nearly as much time with my best friend as she'd like. And now that she's spending even less time with B, this has only become more apparent to her. J keeps trying to make plans with B, but B is either always busy or just ignores her. If I were my friend J, I would have simply stopped hanging out with B a long time ago. It's obvious she's more interested in her boyfriend and isn't as interested in a friendship with J as she originally thought. I even personally told J that it seems like B was only her friend until something she thought was better came along, which is a terrible thing to do. J does have other friends, but not really any that she hangs out with consistently. I find it interesting that despite women supposedly being more emotionally available, J finds it easier to continue struggling with this person who clearly doesn't care for her, as opposed to just finding new friends, or even spending time with others she already knows. I moved to my state's capital for a year. At some point, a high school buddy messaged me on Facebook. We hadn't hung out in a long time. I was already out of college by then, but we were good friends in high school. He knew I lived in the capital and wanted to visit. He and his group of friends were getting a hotel in town and wanted to know if there was anything fun to do. I mentioned there was a bar arcade that I loved to frequent. Suddenly excited, my friend asked me if I wanted to join, to which of course I said yes. I didn't know the three other guys that were with my friend, but I fit into the group easily. Felt like we had known each other forever. We joked around and tried to outdo each other at pinball. We got very drunk, took an Uber back to my apartment, drive safely, Everyone. An Uber is $20 while a DUI is thousands. And played a box of Magic. The gathering cards my friend had bought earlier that day. I connected more easily with random men I didn't know than my friend Jay could connect with her supposed best friend. I don't know why that is. It's not like I'm more sociable than Jay, as I'm an antisocial introvert. But maybe something in these stories can provide some additional explanation. Story 49. I would say the lack of drama in a male friendship. I have known my male best friend since grade school. We have spoken twice in the last 10 years. Perfect, no drama. Story 50. Most of my male friends I've known since elementary and middle school. We've just never stopped talking. Story 51. I think it depends since, for me personally, I have both male and female friends from when I was around 3 to 6 years old. Personally, I think men are better friends with each other, but when it comes to being women in a male-dominated friend group, we are often neglected, at least from my experience. Regarding girls, I think many parents raise daughters to be competitive with each other. I have a complex identity issue that makes me switch between feeling more masculine and feminine. In the masculine mindset, I feel like I have less need to compare myself in many aspects. Story 52. I can't speak for anyone but myself, but my male friends and I have been in each other's lives for so long because we're all grouchy, world-hating individuals who have similar interests. We love to tease each other, but if anyone else asks, they're the best people walking the face of the earth. Plus, we enjoy the most random activities. Cigars and drinks at the local bar? Sold. Flea markets and antique stores? Hop in the truck. Car show with a band? What time do you want to leave the house? With my female friends, it's a lot of stress and effort. I've never really kept one more than a few years because of the differences. It feels like a news interview, coordinating an aircraft carrier landing, and knitting a sweater out of chinchilla hair all at the same time. Most outings involve food and alcohol of some kind, followed by a shopping trip. It's a whole different environment than with the guys. Story 53. The comment about having many children is as insulting to a man as it is to a woman if perceived negatively. However, since it's a random woman, why would he react to that? Story 54. I am still friends with many guys from high school, while the girls I knew from the same time period stopped contact or chose to start arguments. I've always felt that my male friends have my back, and we pick up where we left off despite not seeing each other often, but the girls have all but disappeared. I'm mindful of this when meeting new people, too. Guys are far more interesting and easier to get along with. Story 55. My wife has a few friends, albeit very close to those few. She says female friends are exhausting. Story 56. Low expectations. I see one of my best friends maybe once or twice a year. We just pick up where we left off. We're both busy family men who understand that we don't need to see or talk to each other constantly to remain friends. Story 57. Guy friendships can be wholesome and long-lasting. Girls being friends with guys doesn't usually work the same way because most of the time, the guy has romantic intentions. It is rare for guys to be best friends with women they find unattractive. Often, these friendships involve attractive women who have placed the guys in the friend zone, while the guys lack the confidence to move on, hoping for a future chance. Story 58. I don't know about that. My wife is best friends with her high school friend despite that being 30 years ago and living on opposite sides of the world. Guys here will appreciate the sentiment, but I don't think it stands up to scrutiny. Story 59. I don't think there's any truth to this, except that male relationships are generally more casual. Story 60. I don't think I currently have a single friend, by which I mean a true friend, not just a friendly acquaintance, that I've known for less than 20 years. Now, I can only state my observations. Every girl I dated would lose friends, and I think it's because they expect too much out of friendships. I have friends I won't see or talk to for a year, then send them a text and be like, "What are you up to this weekend? Want to hang out?" Sure. I remember one specific incident with an ex. She was upset that her friend hadn't texted her lately. I suggested she just text her if she wanted to hang out, but she said, "I'm usually the one who reaches out. So what?" I never keep track of who texted who last or who reached out last with my friends. Eventually, she sent her friend a long message about feeling unappreciated and that it felt one-sided. They were no longer friends after that. Her friend defended herself and my ex doubled down. The end. I've seen this many times, where women keep metrics on their contributions to the friendship and then become upset when a friend isn't meeting their standards. Most women I've been with have a core group of girlfriends who are, relatively speaking, new friends. My wife and I got married at nearly 40. She had known her maid of honor for 5 years. I knew my best man since I was 14 years old. Every single groomsman on my side, I had known since before I was 20. The only reason I'm not still friends with people from before high school is that we moved after my 8th grade year. Before the age of the internet, it was just harder to maintain a long-distance friendship, and you just moved on with your life without that person in it anymore. Story 61. I mean, I've known women who get upset with their friends because one bought and is wearing an outfit she wanted for herself. Guys would never do that. We would be more likely to say, "Cool. I love that shirt. I'm gonna go out and get one. Where did you get it?" When everything is drama with women and they get upset with each other over inconsequential issues, it makes it hard to maintain a friendship. Story 62. I'll add my experience and take on this. However, for now, the short answer is that we don't judge each other. We may make mistakes with each other, but we understand loyalty is just as important as love. Sometimes loyalty is more important because love fades. You're lying if you claim to love someone you know well constantly. I feel there's no way to truly love someone without seeing their flaws or dark and weird sides. But once you're accepted along with these flaws, then that's true brotherhood. Story 63. The ability to not talk for months, then to talk for hours randomly and pick up like you never left off. This is one of the best attributes of male friendships that last. If they require constant day-to-day and week-to-week maintenance, they'll fizzle out. Story 64. Guys can literally say anything to each other, and it can be a term of endearment to just shake it off and be boys together. We often hear the most heinous things from our closest friends and accept that it's not done maliciously. I've seen firsthand women end friendships over what color the other was wearing that day and that they didn't match properly to a party. Story 65. I think one thing that makes male friendships seem easy from an outsider's perspective is that when we get together, we don't need to spend a lot of time catching up. I feel like women feel the need to find out every little detail about what has happened since they last saw each other, whereas I might meet up with a buddy to golf or something, and we are in the moment. We catch up with questions here and there, but overall we are there to do the activity. Story 66. I am a 36-year-old male and reflecting on my relationships through the years. My friendships with other men have been more based around having fun together, sports, or other common interests. We've had plenty of personal conversations and are always vulnerable with each other, often laughing at ourselves for being foolish. I don't think our friendships are deep in the classic sense of the word, but they are meaningful to all of us, and I've been friends with the same group for 15 years. My friendships with women have been more emotionally driven, whether that means one of us was attracted to the other or just the topic of conversation. My conversations with female friends were always heavier and more personal, and I can see how that can cause burnout. In contrast, with my guy friends, we just enjoy each other's company, conversation, and always have each other's back. Story 67. Men don't demand as much in their friendships. Straight male friend. Story 68. I feel like I have to put on an act. There you go. Men don't do that. Most of us have very little in the way of a filter, and the good ones are comfortable with who they are and don't need one anyway, or at least don't feel like they do. Story 69. Male relationships tend to decrease over time, whereas women seem to do a better job of maintaining relationships over the long term or establishing new ones. Story 70. Most male friendships don't involve backbiting, jealousy, or gossiping. Women's friendships often include these elements. Most men are straightforward, but I have also seen men who gossip or are jealous of their friends. Male friendships, from my personal experience, are not dependent on regular interactions. We can pick up from where we left off and everything would be fine. I don't think that's the case with women's friendships. Story 71. I don't know. I thought I had friends, but so far they've declined the last 3 times I've asked to hang out. Then they go on a trip, so now I wonder if they're just kind of done with me. Story 72. While this is a generalization, it is often described that men typically have shoulder-to-shoulder relationships, while women typically have face-to-face relationships. Men tend to band together towards or against a common goal, and as long as that platform exists, they will do that together. The goal exists as a bridge to connection, not to avoid emotion but to act as something to pass time while all emotions, whether good, bad, pleasant, or ugly, happen. This approach ensures the pressure is never really on us as individuals to be anything, but it gives us a space to find value in the effort we put into things together. This is not to say that women are the opposite, but the face-to-face component is more obvious among women. Overall, validation and being seen are more important than the problem at hand. Not that problem solving is unimportant, it's just secondary to relationally supporting each other. Story 73. I wonder if guys have healthier outlets for and outlooks on competition. Sorry if it's ignorant, but my read on some girls is that anyone competing with them in terms of looks, status, popularity, and so on is a threat or cause of insecurity, which eventually fractures the relationship. I'm not really bothered by any friends who are better than me, whether stronger, more popular, richer, or smarter. I just think they're cool or, if anything, motivating. Story 74. Because women feel a constant need to compete with other women around them. Looks, clothing, boyfriend's looks, size of their ring. They're in constant competition, trying to one-up the girl next to them. Most men don't care in the same way. Story 75. There is a joke in my country that goes like this. If you are a male and you've just murdered someone and you need help, just call your preschool friend whom you haven't seen in years. He'll definitely come to give a hand. Most guys I know bond over small things. Even if they don't see each other for 6 to 8 years, when they do see each other, they just talk about that small thing that bonded them. In short, male friendships last long mostly due to some small mutual interest they share. For example, if I love the Beatles and my friend whom I haven't seen in many years also likes the Beatles, whenever I listen to them, I am reminded of that friend. When we see each other again, we talk about that shared interest and bond again like it was yesterday. Story 76. I think men are less demanding of other men on an emotional level. Men generally find it easier to accommodate a friend's new romantic partner than women do. For example, Story 77. The best way I can think to describe it is that we're just ourselves. We don't put on an act, we just want genuine friends. Don't make my life harder and just chill with me. That's all I ask from a friend. Story 78. Guys have the ability to accept each other's differences and fully enjoy whatever interests they have in common. Story 79. In today's society, don't expect anyone to do the work for you unless you have very high status, in which case they may be partially using you to increase their own status. If you want a male friendship, you have to put in the work yourself. You are the only person responsible for your needs, wants, and happiness. Joining a men's group can provide much of the benefit of male companionship without the feeling of one-sided effort. Most of these men are also making an effort to be there, so you'll have a pre-selected group of guys who value and appreciate other men. You get maximum benefit from joining groups that focus on activities similar to primitive situations, such as wilderness skills, woodworking, repairing things, yard work, hunting, military simulation, martial training, or gym activities. Story 80. I think it's harder to have friendships with guys because most of the time when I would begin to form a friendship with a guy, they would want a relationship or make it uncomfortably obvious that they were attracted. I much prefer friendships with women, as most of the time they are genuine and aren't coming from a place where they want something other than friendship. Regardless, I'm now best friends with my husband, and I am not as close to my female friends. Probably the only issue I have had with other women is their guy being too nice to me and them getting upset. This is tough because, in these situations, you have no control over this happening. It feels like someone is upset that you exist. I also think society tries to set women up as competitors with each other, and that is nonsense. That said, I'm surprised to hear someone talk about male bonding like this. It seems like some guys are quick to try to take another guy's girl, and many don't seem like loyal friends. I suppose the good male friendships between guys form similarly to good female friendships between girls. Story 81. A good, long-lasting friendship or any relationship begins with laughter. It opens up both people and enables trust. From there, you should never lie to them and keep it real. Story 82. Socialization when we're younger shows that men often just exist and relax without deeper meaning, whereas women seek deeper meaning everywhere. If one man says something to another, it's likely taken at face value. However, when women speak, it can be interpreted in many ways. This leads to mistrust and misunderstandings in friendships, which can impact their longevity. Story 83. In my mid-30s, the relationships that last are those where people actually respond, have conversations, and attend events that I invite them to, and vice versa. One-sided relationships of any kind are a chore and not worth the time. Story 84. For me, it's the safety. We can share everything and be assured that this information will not be used against us. Also, my friends never have to think about money if they hang out with me or I with them. We never judge each other harshly. If we like each other, we hang out regularly. If we are busy, we take long breaks, but the bond stays the same. My male friends, at least the ones from my school, are my real brothers. Story 85. Do not let each other borrow large sums of money, anything over $40. If they never pay you back $40 or less, it shouldn't be a big deal. If they owe you over $100, chances are they won't pay you back and may start ignoring you to avoid the topic. The longer you two don't speak, the more the friendship fades away. Story 86. Guys don't make demands on friendships. There's no obligation to get in touch. You meet up when you feel like it, and when you don't, you don't. Even if there's a break of a few years in between, you're still friends. We take it less seriously, and that makes it last longer, I guess. Story 87. I feel like men are more likely to put differences aside and aren't as sensitive to being put down as women are. Men can verbally and emotionally assault each other and still be friends. I remember guys purposely hitting each other in the groin when we were younger, playing tackle football without pads, punching each other's knuckles, and doing all sorts of silly things. Women aren't as willing to receive such blatant behavior. Men will insult each other's weaknesses and downfalls for fun. And it not only gives us tougher skin, but we also laugh together about it, rather than talking behind each other's backs. Some women are good at this, but it seems to be a more common activity among men. So I guess what I'm saying is that we're better at handling abuse from our friends. It makes us feel like brothers. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.